Then he swung his fist wildly, a yard from Bodger's face, and opened his hand. Fine gravel sprayed into Bodger's eyes. There was no need for the second handful. The huge menacing figure was suddenly crouched up helpless, tears streaming down his face. Calmly, full of murder, Chaz picked up his gas mask case and swung it. It hit the side of Bodger's head with a sound like a spreading pumpkin. Bodger screamed but did not fall. Chaz swung at him again. The gas mask case dented dramatically. Bodger crashed into the corrugated iron fence. Chaz raced his tin the third time. All the hates of all the years, infant school, junior school, welled up in him. It was as well that Kem snatched the gas mask from his hand. "You're bloody mad! Stop it!" Kem yelled. Chaz snatched from his weapon again. Clogger kicked it away and held Chaz's arms behind his back. Then everyone watched Bodger aghast as he reeled about, blood spurting from both hands held across his face. Then the Wolfgang turned and fled. It was Clogger who approached the moaning lump, pulled his hands away and looked. A 2-inch flap of forehead hung loose. "Shut your wailing, man, you'll live," he said to Bodger. "Stop going on like a wee bairn." He turned to the group. "Better be getting him to the hospital." Fortunately, it was only 200 yards away. A stiff, starched sister took over. "How did this happen?" she said like a high court judge. "I hit him," said Chaz. "With what?" "Me gas mask." "You're a wicked, vicious boy," said the sister. "I shall ring up the headmaster personally. You grammar school boys should know better. You might have killed him." "Who's bigger than me?" "That's no excuse. British boys fight with their fists." Chaz felt like a criminal. "British boys fight with their fists," said Chaz's dad. Went off to mend the greenhouse. He didn't speak to Chaz for 2 whole days, and neither did his mother, even all through the air raid. "Britishers do not use weapons. They fight only with their fists," said the headmaster, flexing his cane. "Bend over, boy." It was 6 of the best and very painful. The class treated him with awestruck and horrified silence. It was their opinion that Bodger had asked for it, but Chaz shouldn't have done it. "But what do you do if you're small?" asked Chaz hopelessly. Nobody answered. They got on with their classwork. The neighbours said Chaz was a wicked boy who'd come to an evil end. Mark their words. It was all very trying. Chaz felt imprisoned in a glass bowl. No one would talk to him but Audrey. So it was Chaz, Nikki and Audrey who started the whole thing off one night after school. "Look, there's Bodger," said Audrey. Both Nikki and Chaz jumped, for their different reasons. But Bodger was only getting on a bus to go home with Mum, his head still completely encased in a spotless white bandage that was changed every night. The school was willing to call him the Sheik of Araby, because it looked like a turban. Bodger had come down in the world since the fight. For a start, his mother kept him off school a whole week, and then began calling at school for him every day at 4 o'clock in case the big rough boys were at him again. She went on and on to everyone who would listen about the amount of bullying that was on at Garmouth High School, but 1 or 2 people had told her for a few home truths about her darling's arm twisting, so it was doubtful if she even knew herself whether she was guarding Bodger from the world or the world out from Bodger. But even discounting her mother's going on, Bodger was a flop. His gang didn't want to know him anymore. They had been a disaster, and they wanted a new leader. Besides, now he knew that the other side of the plane was like. He was uncertain of himself. He was put out his tongue as Chaz of the bus swept past, and fell to dreaming of a future revenge. "Sit up, you great hulk," said his mother, poking him in the ribs with her elbow, "and wipe your nose." Chaz, Audrey and Nikki reached Nikki's gate and hung around, unwilling to break up. They were all like us now. "Like to see my goldfish?" asked Nikki. "It's 6 inches long." "Jurf," said Chaz. "They always die when they get too big for the jam jar." "'Tisn't in the jam jar. He's got a pound all to himself. He's 4 years old." "A pond." "My pet rabbit's 94, retorted Chaz, but without much heat. He was nosy, so he let himself be let in. They passed the lodge at the entrance, with its windows boarded up and people's names chalked on the door. "That's where Graham and the gardeners live," said Nikki, "but he's going to Birmingham to work on munitions." The drive zigzagged through the thick damp rhododendrons, and ended up nearly where it had started. The great white front door, like a Greek temple, but the paint was peeling off. A sailor sat on the steps cleaning his boots. They stared at him, but he just said "faff off" without looking up. "We've got ratings belted on," said Nikki. "Come round to the kitchen. Might it be something to eat?" They went in. There was something to eat. A loaf still warm and a 7-pound tin of butter, opened and left lying like a tin of cheap peas. Nikki carved great lumps of the loaf. It bent like a concertina, and stayed bent. Chaz stabbed into the deep well of butter. You could have lost it in it. Charles had never seen so much butter in one place since the war. "Where'd you get it?" "Oh, it comes off the destroyers. Every time, everything comes off the destroyer." Nikki kicked at a mass of empty gin bottles that lay stacked under the kitchen sink. Charles thought his mum wouldn't have liked that much. Or the plates of cold egg and bacon in the sink with cold water dripping on them, or the half glass of something brown with a dead fly in it. He suddenly felt sorry for Nikki. Money wasn't everything. "What does your mum do?" "Not much since my father got killed." Nikki's father had been a ship's captain. Before the war, Charles had often seen his ship steam in, with its great white hull and yellow funnels. Captain Nicol had always been dressed in spotless white too, with yellow braid on his shoulders. Every time he came home, he gave parties and garden parties, and Mrs. McGill said they always got invited, really thought they were somebody. Then in January 1940, the Cyclades was hit by a German torpedo off Gibraltar, even though she was camouflaged with grey stripes and smiling handsome. Captain Nicol vanished beneath the waves forever, and his photograph never appeared in the local paper again. Have you some more?" said Nikki, pointing at the bread. "Ta," said Chaz. "What are you doing, Benjamin?" The new voice was haughty, but rather wobbly. A tall, thin woman was standing in the doorway with a glass in her hand. Chaz thought she looked like a film star gone wrong. She was still wearing her dressing gown, though it was 4:30. There were stains down the front. They could even make out tea or marmalade. "What are you doing? Who are these children?" Mrs. Nicol let go of the doorpost to come into the room, staggered and changed her mind. Her dressing gown was falling open, and Chaz thought he wasn't wearing much. She wasn't. He felt all queer. "Fiona, what are you doing?" Another voice. A man came from the room behind Mrs. Nicol. "That's the chaplain in charge of the ratings," muttered Nicky. "He lives here too." "Mind you behave yourself, Benjamin," said Mrs. Nicol vaguely, and ished away. There was a long silence in the kitchen. "Let's go and see the goldfish," said Aubrey abruptly. They went down the long back garden. It was full of interesting things. Walls and steps and statues and queer marbles, pots and stands. Chaz wondered if those were the pots where Mrs. Nicol kept her money. His mum always said that Nichols had pots of money, but ivy was growing everything. They peered into the green depths of a large pool and were rewarded by a flash of red gold of all 6 inches long. Nikki sprinkled breadcrumbs onto the thick green water, and the fish rose, mouthing silently. "There used to be 12 of them," said Nikki. "My father imported them from China, but this is the only one left. He's called Oscar." "Hello, Oscar," said Audrey softly. "He only speaks Chinese," said Charles. "What's at the bottom of the garden?" There was a huge rockery, all overgrown with ivy too, and the gravestones of cats and dogs. Nikki knew all their names, and talked about them as if they were still alive. The last wooden cross had no name on it. "What's that one?" asked Chaz. "That's my father," said Nikki, and the other 2 looked away. "What's over the fence?" said Chaz at last, stammering. He climbed to the top of the rockery and peered over. And there it was, the view down to the bay and the sea, exactly the way any Germans would come. I vote we make a secret camp here in the rockery," he said. "Oh yes, please," said Audrey. Nikki nodded. After a moment, there was his only friends, and he wanted to keep them. "Where you been?" asked his mother. "Nichols' house." "You what?" "I've been to Benny Nichols' house. He's got a goldfish 6 inches long in a pool." Mr. McGill set down the newspaper with the glaring headline, "Invasion Imminent," and took off his reading spectacles. "What have you been up to now?" Chaz's voice went up to a screech of righteous indignation. "Nothing. I was walking home with him. I didn't got this fish, and I said he hadn't. You are not to do that there again. And you aren't to play with that nickel boy again." "Why not?" "Never mind why not, because I damn well say not." "Look, tell me why. You always tell me why I can't do things." His father looked at his mother, and his mother at his father. They both seemed acutely embarrassed. We can't tell you. You're too young to understand." "But it's a marvellous place to stay." Sensing their embarrassment, Chaz pressed on unmercifully. "You can play anywhere else if you like, but not at the Nichols' house, and that's final." Mr. McGill vanished again behind the Daily Express. Mrs. McGill went on with her ironing. Chaz knew a brick wall when he saw one, but he also had a taste for getting round brick walls. Nikki's house had suddenly become the most desirable place on earth. "Oh damn," said Audrey. "I spilt another fingernail." She sucked and bit at the nail meditatively, split. Looking up at the sky, it was a fine sunset for December, with a rim of sun just showing over the trees to the west. "I'll go and get some lemonade," said Nikki. They watched him running and ducking towards the house, keeping on the side of the living room where his mother was, with the officer. "He's not a bad kid when you get to know him," said Charles. My mother doesn't like him, said Audrey. She told me not to come here. Mine too, Chaz scuffed his foot. What's everyone got against the poor kid? I think it's because his mother drinks. So does my granda, but everyone likes him. Well, it's, sailors, Audrey blushed. Chaz blushed. The barrage balloons are high tonight. Must be going to be a raid. Go on. They only send them up high to test their cables. They both looked up at the barrage balloons. There were 5 around the mouth of the river, each known to the locals by an affectionate nickname. There was the South Shield sausage and the Wellington windbag. The nearest one was called the Fish Key Buster. The raising and lowering by RAF men sweating at winches was a regular treat for crowds of children, nearly as good as going to the cinema. For the adults, there was a kind of air raid barometer, except that no one really knew what the raising and lowering meant. At this time of night, the last of the sunlight caught them, long after the rest of the earth was dark. When they were very high, they glowed so small and bright it was impossible to tell them from the first stars. But they were not that high tonight. You could see their silver slides and fat fins. They looked like flabby silver elephants, nosing this way and that in the light breeze. And then Chaz gasped, black on the blue dusk from the east it came. Black, twin-engined propellers idling like fans, soundlessly gliding slow and low. A German aircraft. A moan broke from Chaz's lips, not of fear, but frustration. The gun! But it was a mile away in Bunty's yard. The plane drew nearer, lower. A faint sighing came on from it, a whistling of strings and wires like a kite. It was a fighter, with 4 cannons in the nose. The fighter wobbled. The nose veered and the tiny black cannon mouths pointed straight at Chaz. A face without goggles looked down at him from the cockpit, from rooftop height and only a football pitch away. "Get down!" screamed Audrey. "What's happening?" said Nikki, and dropped a whole tray of lemonade and the remains of the rockery. But Chaz stood, glaring up at the flight, the pilot of the airplane. He was a Britisher. He didn't jump into holes like a rabbit for no German. Even if it had 4 cannons, the Germans would laugh at it if he did feel powerful. Nazi pig, he stuck up 2 fingers in the air, and not Churchill's way either. The pilot laughed. The plane filled the sky, and then there was an ear-splitting roar, and the air was full of black, oily smoke. "I'm dead," thought Chaz. "I'm dead, and I didn't feel a thing." Then he started coughing, and his eyes started streaming. "I'm in hell," said Chaz. I wasn't very surprised, but it seemed Audrey and Nikki were in hell too. But for there they were lying at feet, coughing as well, and the smoke was thinning, and there was the fence again, and the plane was nowhere to be seen. "You fool," said Audrey. He started up the engines. "There he is." The black shape was streaking upriver. The odd gun was firing now from the ships. Black rose blossomed round the plane, above, high, behind, never on target. "Go on, get him," screamed Chaz, but the pilot was in a playful mood. He turned and looped and spun his wings like a boy showing off riding a bicycle with no hands. By that time every gun had joined in. Traces from the pop-bombs on the bank top grew like red-hot stitches on the blue surge of the sky, but they were so slow, always too slow to catch the German. And then he was climbing, head straight for the South Shields barrage balloon. The sound of his cannon fire came, then as a zip fastener, and a yellow rose grew among the black. The balloon was burning, falling, silver turning black, dropping off like a paper on a French cigarette. "Get that Nazi swine," yelled Chaz, jumping up and down. "Are you blind? Get your eyes charked!" Men shouted to the ref at football matches. The fighter performed a beautiful half-loop, rolled over the top of it, and made for the Wellington key windbag, which was being winched down as quickly as the frantic crew could turn the handles. The Ack gunners intensified their efforts. "Oh God!" screamed Chaz. "You couldn't hit a junk in Guthrie's bar on Saturday night." This was a phrase of his grandfather's that his mother didn't like. It was at that moment that an over-enthusiastic anti-aircraft team scored a hit on the Wellington windbag. It made a lovely bang that turned the fighter over on its back. "Oh no," Charles beat at Shree and Agri. "Where are those Spitfires from Eglinton?" The German recovered and made straight at them. "What?" Chaz glanced up. The Fish Key Buster, on its way down, was right overhead. "Get down!" Audrey pulled him to the camp they had dug, a shallow pit 3 feet deep, and the wall of rocks a foot high around them. A weak, striving blisters, broken fingernails, and it felt pathetic now. The guns were now following the fighter. The flashes were terrible. The shrapnel felt like black rain. Chaz threw himself across Audrey protectively. It was a man's duty. Then the plane cannon fired. The air stank with cordite. Shell fragments slashed through the trees and privet of Mrs. Nichols' garden. With a roar, the Fish Key Buster exploded, and the burning balloon was falling right at them. They huddled together in a final terror, pressed tight like kittens. They were rustling. At last, a roar of engines dwindling. They got up. The tree above them was full of silver, draped in festoons like a tent roof. It was the remains of the buster. It looked very large, and they were awed. Then reality reasserted itself. Quick, grab some down. The stuff's waterproof. We need some for the camp. As Chaz climbed and hacked at it, the air raids warning sounded, and 3 very angry Spitfires hurtled overhead. You could almost hear the pilots gnashing their teeth above the whine of their superchargers. They hid behind great pieces of the fish key buster in a disgusting, disused potting shed. Good stuff that, said Chaz. Waterproof. It'll roof in the fortress. Lovely. What fortress? Asked Audrey. Chaz pointed at the hole in the grottery. That will be our fortress. But it's hopeless, said Audrey. We've worked for a week, and it's only a little hole. We need more help. It's time we buried our differences. Not with Bodzer, said Nikki nervously. No, Kem and Clogger. We must work together from the common good. Pub's ass, said Audrey under breath. But not so she could be heard. She was tired of digging in the rockery. Hey, Clogger, whispered Bodzer. Want to join my gang? Show you some dirty postcards my uncle got in Port Shade? Ugh, tripe, said Clogger, and walked away. Bodzer didn't follow him. Hey, Kem, whispered Bodzer. Want to see my uncle's postcards in Egypt? Kem, who was rather attracted to camels and pyramids, said yes. Bodzer passed across a grubby pack of nude men and women in peculiar positions. Kem looked first incredulous, then embarrassed. Didn't like the fellow's moustache, he said after thought. Bodzer changed tack. Glad you've broken off with that McGill. Would you like to come round one night and play with my railway? Bodzer's railway was much more highly thought of than his uncle's postcards, being British. I might, said Kem, flattered. Then Bodzer, over-eager, made his mistake. McGill's got that German machine gun, hasn't he? A look of disgust crossed Kem's face. Yeah, and 2 Matilda tanks behind his rabbit hutch, and a smelly pair of Hitler's underpants in his handkerchief drawer. Bodzer retired in a deeply hurt silence. To his French exercise, his back had the look of a hard done by man. Then I'll be hoping it would happen. But when did this? They were surprised. Chaz and Kem were walking in school in the gloom of December morning. As Garmouth High came into view, Kem gave his great guffaw. Cor, look at that new chimney. Chaz, who had been carefully kicking a Bovril jar along the gutter, glanced up. A long thin aircraft tail was sticking up out of the school roof. They're near, do. 17, said Chaz automatically. Garn, it's a Junkers 88. Tisn't. Tis, just look at those tail fins. Kem pulled his aircraft recognition book out of his pocket. But the picture of the Junkers 88 has been worn away by long contact with the Conkers and Toffees. Hey, there's Stan Little. Let's ask him. Hello, Miss McGill. After another machine gun? Chaz let his mouth fall open in innocent amazement. What do you mean, sir? Skip it. What is it, sir? Chaz pointed at the long thin tail. I'll tell you what it is. It's an early start to the Christmas holiday, as far as you're concerned. No school, sir. It hasn't made a very big hole. No, but it's tetra tanks for us. The school's full of fumes. One accidental spark, and up it goes. Aren't we going to another school, sir? No room. Shirt and Junior coughed it last night, and Priory infants were flattened. They hung around. The others joined them, and there was a usual bomb gossip. A baby got born in one shelter last night, said Audrey big-eyed. Congratulations, dear. What you going to call it? I didn't know you expecting, Audrey blushed so everyone's satisfaction. My dad's busy, said Kem. Some of the pensioners are dying in the shelters. Bronchitis with the damp. Everyone was reluctant to go home. It wasn't that they liked school, but it was left a gap in their lives. Let's go and work on the fortress, suggested Chaz hopefully. But everybody just groaned. 2 mornings later, they were in Nikki's garden. With school gone, what else would they do? Where's Chaz? He said. He wouldn't be long, said Kem. He's got a new idea for making the fortress. Bet it's like the old idea. Shifting rocks. Here we are then, said Chaz triumphantly from behind them. They turned and drew back in the shocked cuddle. It was an adult with Chaz, a very large adult indeed. A man of about 40, strong and pot-bellied. They all knew him. He looked like a photograph of somebody's grandad taken about 40 years ago, blonde hair clipped in the Prussian style and a big bushy Kitchener moustache. He wore an old-fashioned suit with waistcoat, watch and chain, polished boots and a stiff collar, the perfect Victorian alderman, prosperous and proud. You fool, Chaz, said Clogger. Now we've blown it. No, I've not. You know Jan's simple. He doesn't understand a word you say. He's just like an elephant, only not so bright. But feel his muscles. Clogger stepped forward and felt the bulging muscles. John smiled cheerfully and said, Where are you going now? That's all he ever says. Where are you going now? Otherwise he just grunts. How do you get him to follow you? He always helps the milkman give out the bottles. So I got an old milk bottle and waved it at him, and he came. Won't he be missed? He lives with the mother, and she works all day. What use can he really be if he can't understand what you say? Imitate what you do. Just try him. Clogger turned to the biggest rock in the rockery, a rock that had already broken 2 spades, and defied them for a week. He tugged at it futilely. John bent down and grunted, and the rock tore from its earthy bed. "Here, John, here!" cried Chaz, pointing at the place in the proper where the rock was meant to go. John put it down exactly. "Gosh," said Kem, his face lining up. "He is as strong as an elephant. I just hope he never runs amok." Mr. McGill was tireder than any man should ever be. The warden's post had vanished under a direct hit, and the full-time sector leader and his 3 crones watched it. With it, Mr. McGill was now sector leader, with one phone in the front of a boarded-up, windowless house. In between, he kept the gasworks together with tin and cans and bent wire. Chaz hardly saw his father. The moment Mr. McGill sat down, he simply fell asleep, even wearing his tin helmet. Often Mr. McGill would hurry to the kitchen to fetch her his hot meal, only to return to find him face down on the tablecloth, snoring. Then she would hover piteously with the laden plate in her hand, wondering whether to wake up. Which did he need more, food or sleep? Chaz got used to his sleeping father in the room. He listened to ITMA on the radio, did extra French homework, to the sound of gentle snores. Mr. McGill gently stank. The last 3 times he had to try to bathe, the sign had gone up as he was undressing. Mrs. McGill was terrified he would be injured or killed wearing dirty underpants. What shame it would bring on the family. "I don't think he'd mind me getting killed, Hinny, if my pants were clean." Mrs. McGill was busy too. Granda had taken bronchitis badly, and his cough dominated the house. When she wasn't nursing, she was walking miles from shop to shop, wheedling things out from under shopkeepers' counters. The odd bit of sausage, 10 cigarettes here and 10 cigarettes there. Neither insults nor stony silence deterred her desperate attempts to charm. Things were not easy between her and Nana. There were low mutterings about 2 women don't fit in one kitchen. So although Mr. McGill sometimes stirred from his heavy slumbers to ask how the bairn was, or where he was, or what he was doing, nobody bothered much. Chaz was in one piece, clean and cheerful, and came home promptly for meals. It was enough. It was quieter and easier for everyone when he was out of the house. Kem's sister had a boyfriend home on leave. Andrew Morgan had a brand new subaltern pip, and 24 hours left in England before Dock and troop ship carried him off God knows where. For God knew how long. It was Saturday night, and for once a fire was lit in the Jones front room. Kem Senior and his missus had tactfully gone to the National Savings Drive. Andy had his tie unloosened, a glass of beer in one hand and the waist of the delectable Miss Jones in the other. The only fly in the ointment was Kem Junior, who was sitting on the hearthrug, building towers of wooden blocks and knocking them down again. He hadn't played with the blocks for years. It was very irritating. "Haven't you got any homework to do?" "No school, so no homework." "Why don't you go and listen to the kitchen radio? There's only stupid play on. All love and kissing. Yuck." Kem kicked the block and so hard it hit his sister on her silken shin. "Cyril, you've lighted them. And then my last prayer." Miss Jones forgot her party manners enough to aim a clout at the brother's head. "Steady," said Andrew nervously. "This could be his last chance to kiss a girl, perhaps forever." Miss Jones remembered himself. "Why don't you just go off somewhere else?" "'Cause this is the only warm room in the house. I'm not going out in the cold, so you two can... Anyway, Mum said I didn't have to." Andrew reached in his pocket for £50. "Fancy the pictures?" "Nothing on but love films," said Kem. His sister sniffed furiously. "Isn't there anyone you want to do?" "Yeah, sit here with me blocks. Of course, I could be in my bedroom and use these blocks to build a machine gun emplacement for my model army, if only somebody would show me how." Andy sighed. He knew all about the designing of emplacements, being newly commissioned in the Durham Light Infantry, but that pamphlet had been marked secret. He hesitated. Miss Jones heaved her splendid bosom in indignation, and then decided to draw Andy. Drawing a child a gun emplacement couldn't possibly harm the war effort. He reached for Kem's French exercise book, temptingly laid near at hand, with a sharpened pencil on top. "Mind you make it absolutely authentic," said Kem savagely. "Yes, Constable Hardy," said the police sergeant with a scarred face, warily. Who wasn't wary? It's a strange bit of nicking in my patch, Sarge. It don't make sense." "Well, someone's pinching sandbags, Sarge. The ones we tied to the lamppost for use against incendiary bombs. Somebody's emptying out the sand and taking them away. But they're the ones dogs pee on. They're so smelly people won't even use them again. Incendiary bombs." "That's the point, Sarge," said Fatty Hardy triumphantly. "No person in the right mind would pinch them. That leaves only one conclusion. It's the work of enemy agents. I wonder they don't just slash them, though." The sergeant leapt up, ignoring his crippled foot, pulled a lock of black hair over his right eye, stuck on an ink rubber note under his nose, and gave the Nazi salute. To Hans der Ripper, an Iron Cross first class for demolishing 150 British big pig sandbags. Heil Hitler. He collapsed into his chair, laughed hysterically. Farley looked round nervously for a first aid kit. Thank you, Hardy. That's the first good laugh I've had in a week. Darling, said Mrs. Nickel. She was standing, Mrs. Nickel, staring out of the bedroom window in her negligee, looking wistful and smoking a cigarette. Yeah, Commander Horsfall was lying on the bed, scratching his head. Somebody's still in her air raid shelter. Go on, I threw an empty fag packet into this that morning. Not that one. That's the one for family. There was a much bigger one in the shrubbery for the servants. They had all been directed to war work. So it was never used. What's the problem then? Well, it's the principle of the thing. I mean, it was ours, even if we never used it. People seem to think they can just do what they like with other people's property these days. Everyone's going so immoral, and all these do is blame it on the war. Come back to bed. I'm on duty in half an hour, but I want to know where it's gone. Sir. Yes, petty officer. Commander Horsfall paused on the house steps. The petty officer was the man Audrey and Chaz had been cleaning his boots here the first day. There's some thieving going on, sir. That from you, Petty Officer Robinson? It's pretty rich. You mean someone's been thieving from you from a change? Yes, sir. What's missing? 3 tin hats, 2 fire buckets, 1 notice board, 1 stove, paraffin, heating, and 1 pump stirrer. Hardly the black market gang's line, are they, Petty Officer? Now 7 pounds tins of butter. Robinson had the grace to blush. Reckon it's that kind, sir. Hers. Sly little devil. Horsfall frowned. The last thing he wanted was trouble with that kid. We don't want bother, do we, sir? Far too snug we are here, sir. Horsfall nodded. Make out a requisition for her new ones. Say the old ones fell overboard. I'll sign it. I'll help you with that concreting, Dad, said Chaz. It was a bright sunny Sunday morning after a bombless night, and Mr. McGill was doing it in a bit in the garden. But he still looked up suspiciously. Help me. You feeling all right? What's the matter? All your little friends gone to church? No, said Chaz at his most instant. I just felt like helping. Innocent. I want to see how you do it. Well, said Mr. McGill, you won't see much. Some thievings gets pinched half me cement. You wouldn't know anything about that. No, Dad, said Chaz.